On today's Motorcycle Therapy, surprising even ourselves, we leave our motorcycles in South America and voyage to the Antarctic. That's all coming up. Here's the backstory.
In August of 2019, Jeremy and I left our jobs, hopped on our bikes, and headed south from Canada all the way to the southern tip of Argentina. That's 15 countries in 7 months. Along the way, we had some adventures and misadventures.
Yeah, we were some of the final motorcyclists to ever grace the decks of the Stahlratte as she plied the waters from Panama to Colombia.
We rode the trampoline of death in Colombia.
We hiked in along the train tracks to Machu Picchu in Peru.
We visited the famous salt flats in Bolivia. It's salty.
Yeah.
And that's just a few highlights.
Of course, in 7 months of travel, they can't all be highlights. We both crashed our motorcycles a few times, and in Argentina we found some of the gravel roads to be unpleasant. Where are we and what are we doing?
Oh, we're on the dirt road in the dirt, riding on dirt, getting covered in dirt. One day in Patagonia, we found the road conditions to be so soft and loose and the wind to be so damn incessant and frustrating that we decided to set up emergency camp right there in the ditch.
And so, when we finally reached Ushuaia in the southern tip of South America, rather than feeling elated, we found ourselves exhausted. We took about a week to rest up, and then we thought about making a last-minute trip to Antarctica. Here's that story.
Just checking to see if you're listening, blah, blah, blah. Just checking to see if you're listening. All right,
Once we reached Ushuaia, we spent a lot of time just kind of relaxing and being tired.
And there was a couple things to do, like drive to the end of the road and get a photo at the end of the road sign, and then see some penguins. We're not in Antarctica, but we're pretty close to it. There are penguins around. So we took a day cruise to an island that let you walk on the island where the penguins are. You aren't allowed to touch them or interact with them. You just walk and you stay on the path, but if they come up to you, you can like hang out and
We
get
saw
really close to them.
thousands and thousands of penguins.
And they're so cute when they walk and they waddle along. It's
and they're
so
not
cute.
shy.
Yeah.
You have to step, at one point, I think I actually stepped over a little penguin that
It was laying
lying
in the pathway.
Yeah, they were, there's different kinds of penguins. There's
Magellan and Chinstrap and Gentoo and King, and we learned the difference.
Yeah, but I can't remember what they were. Anyway, we saw that little colony of penguins, which wasn't so little, and then on the way back, Elle got to drive the boat.
Yeah, it was cool. I complimented on his helmet, and we got talking, and he let me drive the boat.
After we got back from the little penguin colony visit, where Elle got to drive the boat, we decided to start looking around at last-minute deals for the Antarctic. And we hemmed and we hawed, and we had a lot of trouble making the decision because it was quite a lot of money.
So I had some wild idea that last-minute trips to Antarctica might be super cheap, like really good deals. There are some really good deals, but I was thinking like 2,000 or 3,000 Canadian dollars cheap. It was a little more expensive than that.
So here we are in Ushuaia, Argentina, as you can see in the background there. And we're heading downtown right now, Elle and I, to an office building in which we will unburden ourselves of all of our earthly possessions in exchange for passage to
Antarctica.
We're going to Antarctica, and no, we can't afford it really. It's quite expensive,
But it's half price, but it's still really expensive.
yeah, they sell you on these last-minute deals, and it's half price. And because we're meeting a friend in Buenos Aires very soon, we've got some time constraints as well. So that makes it a little bit more expensive for us, but we're gonna do it.
Antarctica.
How do you feel about that?
A little excited and a little scared and a little excited and a little heavy with the worry about money, but excited.
Well, that's just it. Our decision-making process has been kind of turbulent these few days. We've been both convinced that we can't afford it and we shouldn't go, and then we're convinced that we have to go. And what is money anyway? But you exchange it for experience, don't you? Oh, he's not coming with us. There's a few different options to go to the Antarctic, and usually you hop on a ship right in Ushuaia and you sail across the Drake Passage.
And I've heard some good and not so good stories about the Drake Passage.
But we were on a time crunch because of meeting our friend in Buenos Aires.
And this one that we chose, that we paid for, and that just we barely got in under the wire for, actually flew over the Drake Passage from Punta Arenas.
We had to leave Ushuaia, cross into Chile, and get to Punta Arenas.
But on the way, there's the penguin colony, the king penguin colony.
Oh, yeah.
The same one that Ewan McGregor stopped at and Charlie Boorman on their way up.
That's right. Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman, if you have seen Long Way Up, they stopped at a penguin colony and they looked at these king penguins. Well, we stopped there too.
Same place. We didn't know till after we got back home and saw the video. Anyway, we also made a nice little detour to a beautiful road that was gravel. And you were way ahead of me, as you usually are on gravel roads. And by the time I caught up to you, what did I find?
Well, I crashed.
You wiped out. You bit it hard.
So I just came off pretty fast. I wasn't looking at my speedometer, but I think I must have been going 60 or 70 kilometers an hour. Fastest that I've crashed, I think, since I was like 15 years old. I used to do that from time to time. But yeah, the gravel claimed a victim today, and I'm in a little bit of shock. Fortunately, the same soft earth that made me crash is a good soft earth in which to land. So I might have twisted my back a little bit, but I kept my feet on the pegs and against instinct. The instinct was to put my foot down when I was falling, but I think that would have probably broken my leg. So good thing I was able to kind of, I was probably crashing for a long time, so I was able to adjust and keep the feet on the pegs and make a lot of dust, big huge dust cloud. So, well, hopefully not do that again today.
You were up by the time I got there.
Thank goodness it could have been a lot worse.
Then we got to Punta Arenas. We got to the hotel where we had to do a pretty decent briefing before we went on the boat to Antarctica.
You almost had to wear a spacesuit to go to Antarctica. Now remember, this was in February of 2020. So it was just ahead of COVID.
They just started taking our temperature before we got on the boat, and we thought, isn't that a little excessive? This is weird. It's not like there's a global pandemic or anything.
But there were no masks, there were no things like that, but there was a little bit of rumbling of something that was starting to happen.
Now we get a plane. And we get on the plane and we go to King George Island.
So we flew over the Drake Passage to a Chilean military base on King George Island.
So once we landed on King George Island, we walked a little bit from the gravel runway, and then we got on a little rubber Zodiac, which took us to the ship. Splashy ride to the ship.
When we got on board, we quickly realized that we didn't belong there. You know, I'm a budget traveler, don't have a lot of money to splash around, but we splurged on this Antarctic cruise, and then we got this amazing cabin. It's first class all the way. This hotel room, basically on the water, is ours. And we've even got a balcony, and check this out. You go out onto the balcony, and this amazing view. Look at that. If you can see that, there's a Zodiac cruising along behind me. That's what we came in on. And this island, this is our cabin for the night. I'm so looking forward to seeing more of this continent.
We had the nicest room on that boat than any hotel we ever stayed at the whole trip. I think that was nicer than any hotel I've stayed at in my life, possibly.
Well, we had a tiny little bathroom, but it was luxurious.
There
it had
were
its own
4 different shower heads in the shower. For a bathroom on a boat, I was not expecting this. It was fabulous.
It had a king-sized bed, a full TV, and Netflix and movies and stuff. But who wants to watch Netflix and movies when you've got your own private balcony?
Private balcony off our bedroom.
We open up the balcony doors and we're in Antarctica. See these icebergs behind us? There it is in better view. It's crazy.
We literally watched whales and penguins from the balcony of our bedroom. Now we're on the boat, and the first thing that happens the night that we get on the boat is a safety drill. It was pretty cool. And learning where the life vests are and meeting some weird people and some fun people. It was pretty cool. The general plan was to have 2 excursions a day.
2 excursions a day. One was a little Zodiac cruise, and one was actually
Booting on land and walking around somewhere. Now a Zodiac cruise might not seem that exciting. There's icebergs floating all around there's literally humpback whales gently swimming by, almost touchable distance from the Zodiac. It was pretty cool. There's seals. There's like, how many different kinds of seals did we learn about? Weddell seals and fur seals and elephant seals.
The amount of wildlife, especially the whales, was fascinating. Was amazing.
You could just let me sit in a Zodiac for 5 hours while humpback whales swim around me, and I would be content.
Now, how comfortable were you on the Zodiac?
It was chilly. It was a little splashy. It's a rubber boat, and you're either like hanging onto the side or kneeling in the middle. But I'm seeing whales. I'm all right. Why do you ask?
Because I'm thinking of the clip that I'm going to be playing right now. Elle was not comfortable on the Zodiac. And then in the afternoon, or in the morning, depending, you actually get to go on land, and that was amazing.
And hang out with penguins, and just sit there. You could just sit there and watch them, and it was never-ending entertainment. Watch them feeding each other, watch them nesting, watch the skuas come and try to steal the babies, watch them just waddle around. I knew I was taking up too much space on my memory card in my camera, but I couldn't help myself. Every time I saw a penguin walking, I'm like, oh, look, and they waddle so cute. And there's another one. Oh, look, and there's another one. So many penguins just waddling all over the place. They are so adorable.
I thought that it was adorable watching you watch the penguins because you never got tired of it.
But there was one time when we were hanging out, and if you stay where you are and the penguins come close to you, that's okay. You just don't move. And there was a couple of young ones, the ones with the fluffy feathers that didn't have all their dark glossy feathers in yet, and they were checking you out, and you just stood there with a camera and they waddled right over and took a look at you.
Yeah, the little adolescents, they're trying to figure out how to swim, how to walk, and they're trying to figure out like what these big yellow penguins are.
Yeah, we all had the yellow jackets on. Then there were some extra excursions, and I signed up for stand-up paddleboarding. If you're gonna blow your budget, blow it, enjoy it. It was a little extra. I'd never stand-up paddleboarded in my life, but I'd always seen it and thought it looked pretty cool and wanted to try. Why not do it here while they're offering it? It's available, and then I can say, oh, the first time I ever stand-up paddleboarded was in Antarctica.
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
And then one of the excursions that we went to,
Deception Island!
we actually sailed into
A steaming caldera!
yeah,
It was steaming!
we sailed into a volcano.
Launched.
It's called Deception Island.
Yeah, it's not an island, so that's the deception. It's actually a caldera. And you go in through, wasn't it called Neptune's Window? Neptune's Bellows and Neptune's Window. So your little Zodiac lands on the beach, and the water at the beach is steaming. And you can take off your gloves and touch the water. It's like a hot spring. It's like hot tub temperature. And then just wander around in this steaming, magical, inside of a volcano, hanging out with the seals and graves of old whalers at the whaling station.
That's how we spent our days. Half of the day would be set up for a Zodiac cruise. There we'd see all sorts of wildlife. Seals, whales, mostly humpbacks, but we did spot a pod of orcas one day from the viewing platform on board the main ship. And, of course, penguins. We saw a lot of penguins. The other half of the day we'd spend on land. Sometimes we'd just watch more wildlife. Other days we'd climb up a snowy rise to take in the view, or check out old buildings from whaling stations that had been abandoned long ago. In the evenings, after a meal that Elle and I both thought was very fancy, we'd luxuriate in one observation deck or another. My favorite place was high up on the bow in a lounge surrounded by windows. There was a bar up there, and I'd sip whiskey while looking out for whales and watching icebergs slip by. Elle could usually be found drinking directly out of the chocolate fountain. Sadly, all good things must end, and we on the final day, we got onto the Zodiacs again, and we went back to King George Island, and then they did say, yes, you are actually allowed in certain areas to take some photos.
And we're going there then. We're going to try to get there in about 4 or 5 days.
We may have thought that we were done going south before when we reached Ushuaia, but this time for real, we were not going any farther south. Now it was all north, all the way home.
And we had to be in Buenos Aires to meet Brian, and we had about 4 days, 3 days?
Yeah, we cut it pretty close. So our good friend Brian Bailey flew all the way from Calgary down to Buenos Aires to meet us for a little adventure of his own. So we had to make haste. So we got back on the plane, we were reunited with our motorcycles, and then we lit off for Buenos Aires. While you're here, why not click the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel? It helps me out and it costs you nothing. And if you like my videos, you might also like my audiobooks. Motorcycle Therapy and Through Dust and Darkness are both available on Audible, iTunes, or wherever you get your audiobooks. They're also both available for free right here on YouTube.
We got back to Punta Arenas, we got reunited with our motorcycles, and north we go. Along highway number 3 this time.
We stayed with this one eccentric, very kind-hearted man.
Pollo.
His nickname is Pollo. I forget which means chicken. I forget what his actual name is.
But he really encourages motorcycle travelers. There's a few people who told us they went and we wanted to go to the same place they went. I found his contact info and said we'll be arriving tomorrow. We're Canadians. He raised a Canada flag on the flagpole in front of his house to welcome us. And that was just one day outside of Buenos Aires. So then we got into town and then we went to pick up our friend Brian at the airport and we hung out for a while.
We hung out in Buenos Aires with Brian. And then when Brian left, that's when we got onto a ferry and we hit Colonia, Uruguay.
And then we got stuck.
Immediately after arriving in Colonia, Uruguay, COVID-19 hit South America with a vengeance and borders shut down. And then we've got a whole bunch of videos about our time being stuck in Uruguay
for
and
5 months.
All the kind of misadventures we had on our way home.
Just checking and see if you're listening.
We're training for the Antarctic expedition 2020. This is Elle West and her efforts. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Some people do the training, some people do the filming. So each have our role.
Okay, thanks.
Let's just stop. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I don't know. Some of that might be usable.
Thank you very much. Hold on tight.